Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special episode of Maritime Conversations by Meluha Maritime. I am your host, Arjun, and we continue on our mission to explore the Indian maritime domain and see perspectives that are rarely seen and seldom heard. Every year, December the 4th is celebrated as the Indian Navy Day, a date that is etched deeply into our collective memories. It was not always so. For a very long time, the Indian Navy celebrated its annual day on December 15th. It was only in the year 1972 that the date was shifted to the 4th in order to commemorate the role and the daring operations conducted by the Indian Navy during the 1971 Bangladesh Liberation War. During the 1971 war, the Indian Navy participated both on the Western Front along the Arabian Sea as well as the Eastern Front along the Bay of Bengal, during which INS Vikrant and her sister ships, which are part of her carrier battle group, played a very pivotal role in carving out what we know today as the independent nation of Bangladesh. INS Vikrant had embarked with her two squadrons of aircraft to carry out her combat operations, which were INAS 300, the White Tigers, which flew the Hawker Seahawk fighter jet aircraft, and INAS 310, the Cobras, which flew the Alize maritime reconnaissance and anti submarine warfare aircraft. Today, it is an honor and privilege to be joined by one of the 15 select veterans of INA's 300 Squadron, Commander Ashok Sinha, whose daring missions against overwhelming odds etched the names of both the White Tiger Squadron as well as their mothership, INS Vikrant, in the annals of Indian Navy and global maritime history. He is widely recognized as one of the sons of Vikrant. He is amongst the few naval aviators who served during one of the most defining eras of the Indian Naval Air Arm, a career that spans across the nascency of India's carrier borne naval operations through the challenges of the 1960s and well into the crucibles of the 1971 war. He served both during the 65 and the 1971 wars. During the 1971 war, he was a senior pilot of INAS 300, leading and executing multiple offensive strike missions between the 4th and 14th of December, striking targets across places such as Cox's Bazar, Chittagong, Kulna, Chalna, and Mangla, to name a few. It is a privilege to have him with us today as we revisit those times where the aircraft carrier, the missions it flew, and the men who gave everything to fly them are being recollected. Commander Sinha, please welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's an honor to be having you again today, sir. So, to start off with, I would be happy to hear from you. What motivated you to join the Indian Navy and volunteer to the Naval Air Arm?
I joined the Navy due to the fact that when I was in school, my cousin, senior to me, was in the Air Force flying. And I think I got motivated with that. Then I entered the National Defense Academy, where we were there for 3 years. And in the academy, I was the tennis captain of the academy for 2 years and also the chief editor of the academy paper, Rebelli. And after 3 years, of course, I went into the Navy, and I've always wanted to be in the Fleet Air Arm, what was called the Fleet Air Arm at that time, and that's where I went, finally.
Mhm. That's a fascinating start, sir. It really gives us a sense of what the Navy was meant to be in those days. And, that background sets the stage a beautiful stage, if I should say so, for what is to come next. So, could you tell our viewers and listeners, what it is like to fly the Hawker Seahawk, or what were your first impressions of the aircraft, sir?
The Seahawk was one of the best aircraft, jet fighters you could fly at that time. It was given to us by the Royal Navy, or rather, we bought it from the Royal Navy, and it had weaponry of guns, rockets, and bombs. And we used all three of them in the attack on then Bangladesh. And as I said, that the handling characteristics of the aircraft were unbelievable. It was, I believe, so I'm told, the bigger brother of the Hunter. But it was a tremendous aircraft. It was meant to fly from the carrier, and it was something everybody looked forward to in the Navy.
So, sir, now since you've described the Seahawk aircraft for our listeners, from what I understand, operating from an aircraft carrier is way different, or if I should rather say, is a whole different ball game from, operating an aircraft from the land. So, could you explain how was it, different to operate from one of these aircraft carriers? And to set a little perspective for what we are going to discuss in the coming forward.
As my friend Mike Bhada of my squadron said, flying in the Air Force is old hat. The big boys fly from the carrier,
Hmm.
and flying from the carrier is danger and excitement from morning to night. The Seahawk, or any aircraft for that matter, that is operating the carrier, gets catapulted. These days, they're slightly different mode of operation, but it gets catapulted, and you are, as a pilot, thrown against your seat at the back. You do not have your hands on the stick, on the flying control. You have your hand just behind the stick, so that inadvertently you do not pull back and stall the aircraft. And where the throttle is concerned, you f- fold your hand in a fist and put it behind the throttle, so that you do not inadvertently pull the throttle back when you are being launched. And when you go on the catapult, you do your checks and you give your final salute. And when you give the salute, the flight deck officer drops his flag and you are catapulted. The Air Force needs 3,000 meters to get off the ground. And we, on the carrier, do it in 100 feet. So in 100 feet, you go from 100 to 100 knots, from 0 to 100 knots. And as soon as you're launched, the aircraft dips slightly. And as it is dipping, your hand goes in front of the stick. You start easing the stick back and get off into the flying mode. Now, all fighter squadrons operate in formations. The basic unit of a formation of the carrier is two aircraft. The attack unit is four aircraft. And you would be amazed to see that in no time at all, four aircraft are launched and they catch up on the leader and get into formation. And then you're on your own. If it is a high level sortie or a medium level sortie, you go to that height, 15, 20,000 feet or whatever it is. But in all our attacks on Bangladesh, we did low level flying. We went at 50 feet above the water, eight aircraft. And that is how the carrier flying was done. Then you have got night flying, which is perhaps the most dangerous method of operating from any ship, or for that matter, from land. But on the carrier, when you are launched, you have to make sure that your eyes are on the altimeter, on the artificial horizon, so that you do not go into the water. At the best of times, you can have a very, very vivid horizon with the moonlight, etc. But if you look at your launch, during the launch when you're looking outside, you will probably go into the water because you are not able to make sure that you climb. So as soon as you're launched, the you're either on the artificial horizon to make sure that you are climbing and on the altimeter. So then that's a very important issue. People have gone into the water by looking at the artificial horizon. And of course, landing at night is unbelievably dangerous. Aircraft carrier Vikrant, by the way, did not have any radars, neither did the Seahawk. Today's aircraft have radars to guide them to the ship. But in our time, we had no radar, and the leader had to make sure that he had that his team was with him, and he went from one place to the carrier on the speed and the compass. There was no other way of doing it. And I remember very well bringing 4 aircraft once on a night sortie where we had gone on a bombing attack for, I think, 200 kilometers or thereabouts. And coming back, I was getting babies because we couldn't see the aircraft, we couldn't see the carrier. And then, just when one was getting a bit nervous, I heard the sound of from the ship or from the radar people. And slowly, the sound got louder and louder, and I could see from a very distant place the faint lights of the carrier. Now, people generally think that at night flying, the carrier is lit up. It is not lit up because of enemy detection. All you have on the carrier are the outline lights or on the sides showing you the where the center line and the side lines, and you have a cross line on the edge of the deck to make sure you don't go into the deck. And unlike shore flying, where you are looking at the runway, you are not looking at the runway. You are looking at the center line of the runway, and there is something called the mirror on the side. The mirror is what it is, a mirror, but there is a ball of light that is reflected on the mirror that shows you whether you are going up or down. If you are high on your glide path, the yellow light, and we call it the meatball,
Mm-hmm.
starts going up. If you are low, then you are low on the glide path and terribly dangerous. There are times when people don't land, they overshoot, but they go around and come back and land again. But of course, like in everything else in carrier flying, there are accidents and people go into the water due to one reason or another. But generally, we've had a very good record on that.
So that certainly sounds, very dangerous, to operate from a aircraft carrier. I mean, even in broad daylight. And when you talk about operating from nighttime, I'm 100% sure it would be manifolds difficult, from even operating in daylight, where you're basically being guided by a mirror accompanied with a light that you call the meatball, to land on an aircraft carrier. That certainly is something, very, very impressive to hear. So that said, You served during the 1965 war. So we would love to hear your thoughts on, or your experiences on what was the role of the naval air arm and especially your squadron during that period.
Our squadron was based in Jamnagar for country practice. And one morning we got news that we were supposed to attack Pakistan. And we had a briefing at 11 in the morning for an attack in the afternoon. But
Hmm.
as it happened, the Air Force, I believe, the Air Chief objected vehemently to the government not to permit a naval squadron to attack Pakistan. And our chief, Admiral Soman, I think at that time, reluctantly agreed, but we stood down. And then we dispersed the aircraft. The squadron commander was dispersing the aircraft, and we were on standby. I was the staff officer to my squadron commander, late Admiral R.V. Singh, and we were on standby. At 6 o'clock, the officer commanding air of the Air Force station told us to stand down. My squadron commander took off. He said that it's broad daylight and you're asking us to stand down. And I don't agree, and I will not stand down. Again, the OC flying said, "You are on an Air Force base. Stand down." So we had to stand down, and the aircraft got dispersed around to make sure that they were not detected. Just as I was coming back, packing up, I was on the back, pillion rider on one of the youngsters coming back to the mess. And we had just got off, we started moving when the first Canberra pulled up from Pakistan. And then the second, and by the time the second Canberra pulled up, it started attacking, and I think, not I think, I know that I missed the bomb by a few feet, and my guy Verma said, "Sir, it's Air Force." I said, "It's not Air Force." But during the night, my squadron commander, I talked to the OC flying, and he said that, "Look, we want to get airborne and take on any attacks from Pakistan." So my squadron commander and I took off at night after information that there were Pakistan aircraft coming. Uh, the Air Force did not switch on the runway lights. They made us go by flares. We did. We did spot an aircraft, but by the time we got onto his tail, he had gone. And then the next day after that, we were told to go back to Bombay. And that's where we waited out the war. If the Navy had attacked Pakistan at that time, the whole situation would have changed in our favor
Certainly, sir.
because
Certainly.
Pakistan was not ready.
Hmm. Yes,
I,
sir.
I make this point because it was a blunder committed at that time by the authorities by not letting, and it was only because the Air Force chief felt that he could not allow a naval squadron to take the credit for the attack. I must say this because it happened and it would have changed the concept of the war.
Yes, sir. So now coming down to the next question. So I'm pretty sure that your the INAS 300's experiences during the 65 war would have certainly shaped the way how it fought the 71 war. So during the 71 war, of course, you were the senior pilot of the squadron. And could you tell us a bit about your experiences from the war? And what were some of the challenges that were faced by Vikrant and your squadron? And how did you overcome these challenges, sir?
Vikrant, I'm going to be a little of a long one, but I must tell you. Vikrant was in Bombay, sitting on three boilers. Now, a carrier needs a certain amount of speed to operate aircraft. The carrier was waiting for spares, which were not coming because they were due to come from UK. But and I at that time was the command aviation officer to Admiral Krishnan, who was the admiral in charge of the East Coast. Then came the news that things are happening and then we may go to war. Admiral Krishnan called me one day and he said, Ashok, can we bring the carrier? So I looked at him because he knew as well as I did that the carrier is on three boilers. So pretended I had not heard. He said, you haven't heard me. Can we bring the carrier here to operate? So I said, sir, please give me 5 minutes. I went back and I did my calculations and I told him, yes, we can, as long as we have the right engineer officer and you allow me to tell you what pilots can come on board first. And then the carrier came. There was a lot of excitement. First, we landed the helicopters on board. When they got going, I told the admiral, "Sir, now we can bring the Alizés, the anti-submarine." And then they landed, two of them. And finally, the big ones, the Hawks. And I told the admiral, "Sir, please allow me to nominate or suggest the pilots to you." And well, we did, and one by one, all aircraft landed. And we had 18 aircraft on board at that time. And one day, the captain of Vikrant and the commander air came by helicopter to see the admiral, and they did. And after that, the admiral called me and he said, Ashok, you're going. I said, so I looked at him, I said, the war was just starting or about to start. And when I could have been useful, I was being told to go. He said, yes, the captain wants you on board. So I said, sir, he said, on board as senior pilot. So that I was, delighted. And at that time, I was medically down, but medically down due to football, not any other reason. So I said, sir, I'm medically down. He said, that's fine. Go to Bangalore, get yourself upgraded, and join the carrier, which I did. And finally, got to the carrier, took over as senior pilot, and I could see that the squadron was in a bit of a mess. The ground crew were not doing what they were supposed to do. The aircraft were not serviceable as they should be, and how many should be serviceable. And so we got to work, and day and night we worked, and we got everything going. Now, I had not flown for 6 months, and as you know, before anybody goes on the carrier, any pilot, he has to go and do shore flying, what is known as MERLs, mirror aided deck landings. I had not flown for 6 months, so I should have gone back. Then the commander air came one day and he said, Ashok, the carrier can't go back for you to do medals. Now, are you happy getting launched from the carrier? I said, I haven't flown for 6 months. He said, we all know you haven't flown for 6 months. So I said, yes. And so I got briefed and got catapulted from the carrier without having gone ashore, and did what I was supposed to do. I flew, and then as senior pilot, I took over flying as well. And before you knew it, we were into the attack on 4th of December. 10:30, 4th of December, we got briefed at, I think, around 6 in the morning, and 10:30 was the launch. So 8 aircraft, Squadron Commander plus 4, I plus 4, 8 aircraft off the water to Cox's Bazar. And we did Cox's Bazar and came back. And the next attack was on Chittagong. They did that. And then, of course, Khulna, Chalna, others. So that's how we went through the war.
Hmm. So that certainly puts a lot of things, in perspective, regarding how, under what circumstances, Vikrant literally operated during the 1971 war. So, as I understand from our talks over the last couple of months, I believe that you had once ejected over the sea. So, could you please describe your experience to our viewers as to what happened, and how did you overcome this kind of a situation?
I was, we were flying off Goa, and the sortie was for, those days, maybe even now, um, Goa had a target in the water, in the sea. And we used to do our target practice on that particular target. I was part of 4 aircraft. I was number two, I remember. And at 1200 after takeoff, we were just going into the attack when I got this was at 1200 feet, I remember. And I got a big shudder on my aircraft, a huge vibration. I thought I'd hit the jet stream of the leader, but when I looked to my right, I found that my wing had folded upwards towards me. So I told the leader, mid-air collision, and I'm peeling off. I peeled off and I tried to see if I could handle the aircraft, and I found that there was some semblance of control. So I told flying control, I said, Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. I heard a Mayday. But I think I can make it to the airfield because I'm able to control it with my rudders on that. But just as I said that, my wing fell off. And I went into a spin. And I remember till today that we were going in the spin. I looked at the clock and it was 650 feet. I ejected sideways, went into the water. Now, having gone into the water, I should have stayed afloat, but I kept going down. And I went down and down, and instead of light becoming more, it became darker. I estimate I went down about 30, 40 feet under the water. And I was wondering what was going on. But then I started doing the checks around my flying suit, and I found that I had not pulled, my hand had frozen on the May West, on the life jacket. What you need to pull the life jacket to inflate it, to bring it up. So I did that, and I came up and I opened the dinghy. Now, people think it is very easy to get into a dinghy from the sea, but the sea is not static. It's there are waves all the time, and just getting into the dinghy is a problem. I got in and I was totally exhausted by then. It was a nightmare. I was in the water for I think about 4 hours, and I kept trying to signal to various helicopters that were going around, but as often happens when you are in trouble, the helicopter doesn't see you till the end. Finally, they did, and I got winched up after that and ashore. And I was down for a day, meaning I got the accident today. I was down for the next day, and the third day I was up in the air on the first sortie. So that's how I survived my ejection.
So that must have been a very intense and unforgettable experience. Thank you for sharing with us with such honesty as to how you felt regarding this entire accident. The story really captures the unpredictability and dangers of flying over the sea, and it's a powerful reminder of how the naval aviators brave these kind of challenges almost on a everyday basis. So it was, I must also remark that it is truly extraordinary to hear about your direct experiences, about leading your operations over enemy territory during the 1971 war. The pressure, the preparations, and the amount of teamwork and coordination that is required to do all these things like a perfect clockwork. It always comes through so clearly from your account. And that really shows the the human side of what we mostly read in our history books regarding the exploits of the Vikrant and her, aircraft during the 71. Thank you very much, Commander Sinha, for your invaluable time and sharing us your amazing experiences, in the naval air arm. It certainly is a very inspiring one, that is really helpful for the youngsters to understand the thrills of joining the silent forces, also called as the Indian Navy. Dear listeners, this brings us to the end of the Indian Navy Day special episode. As we wrap up, let's take a moment to honor all those who served in the blues and whites, and more so, recognize the vital yet often overlooked roles and contribution of the pilots, observers, and specialist crew of the Indian Naval Air Arm. Thank you for tuning in to Maritime Conversations by Meluha Maritime. If you really enjoyed this episode, do share it with your friends and family to share your tribute to the men and women who safeguard the Indian maritime frontiers. And remember to subscribe to Maritime Conversations on your favorite streaming platform for more stories and insights from the world of the seas. Also, don't forget to follow on our social media handles of Instagram, X, that is formerly Twitter, and LinkedIn. We'll see you in another fresh episode shortly. And until then, this is your host Arjun signing off. Bye bye.